Money has an odor. It's unlike any odor in the world. It's more fragrant to the miser than the most marvelous perfume in the world. He can tell it. You put a money bag to his face, and it's like putting roses to mine. He loves it. He can smell money, can feel it. Money has a distinct feel about it. Put a $20 bill in your hand and ask you to feel it, and then put another piece of paper in your hand, and you can tell the difference. There's a difference. It is an odor to it. All this is part of the inner man, that all things are possible to him. Try it. Before you condemn it, try it. And if you have the evidence to support my claim, well, then it doesn't matter what the world will tell you. If he laughs at you, so what? So they laughed at everyone who had an idea that seemed a little bit off-center. Always laughed at him. They laughed at the idea of going to the moon. Well, now it's an accomplished fact. There are still those who won't believe it happened, you know, because they don't want to believe that it ever happened. There are those who said you couldn't go down and actually live underwater. Now we have a submarine. There are still those who won't believe it. You can present them with all the facts in the world, and they won't believe it. So I tell you, you try it first. And if it proves itself in performance, it doesn't really matter what the whole vast world thinks. Go about your Father's business, which is yourself, and then live a full and wonderful life in this world of Caesar. And the day will come, you will actually depart this world. I mean this age. Because those who are departing it now, unless they are awakened, they still find themselves in a world just like this. But those who have awakened, who have experienced the second birth, the birth from above, find themselves in an entirely different age, where they're all imagination. And they are perfect. And wherever they go, everything is perfect. They don't have to raise a finger to make anything perfect, because they're perfect. All things must conform to them, for they're perfect. That's heaven. So heaven is not an area, it's not a realm, it's a body. And when that body is awakened within you, which is the wonderful human imagination completely awake, then wherever you go clothed in that body that is completely awake, everything is perfect. If you found yourself in a forest of dead trees that all burst into foliage, in the desert it would all bloom like the rose, because you are there. No blind man, deaf man, no handicapped man could stand in your presence. He would be instantly transformed into a perfect man because you are perfect. That's heaven. It's harmony. So it's not a place where you're going to go, pearly streets and all that nonsense. No. It's just simply you in a world that is perfect because you are perfect. And the day will come, you will awaken that body, for it's in you now. That body is in you, but it's sound asleep. And one day you will experience the resurrection. And you'll know the mystery of the resurrection. When you rise, and you rise within yourself. For the grave in which Christ is buried, if the Lord is buried, is your own skull. That's where he is buried. And in that tomb where he is buried, one day he will awake, and he will come out of that tomb. And it's you who comes out of the tomb, and you'll know who you are. He is buried in every child in the world, this universal being, and yet one. Billions of us, and yet only one Lord. And that one Lord, in his fullness, is buried in you, individually. And when you awaken, you are he. So tonight, take a go. Make it a lovely go, either for yourself or for another. For any time that you exercise your imagination lovingly on behalf of another, you're mediating God to that other. So, bring a friend before your mind's eye. Represent him to yourself as the man or the woman that you would like them to be. And don't tell them, ask for no praise, just assume that they're talking to you. and telling you the most marvelous news about themselves. And you congratulate them on that good news and go your own way. Believe in the reality of that imaginal act. It may happen tomorrow. It may happen the day after, or a week later, or a month later. It has its own appointed hour, and it is ripening, and it's going to flower. So don't be concerned. Leave it alone, and it will come to pass. So this is what I mean by feeling is the secret. I catch the mood, the feeling that would be mine if I were what I want to be. I don't have to touch something. I can if I want to. But it's the mood I'm speaking of. What would the feeling be like if she were well? If she were this? And then you catch it, just as though it is true. You always go to the end, and the end is where you begin. We're always imagining ahead of our evidence. So go to the end and feel the end. And then dwell in that end, even though reason denies it and your senses deny it. You turn your back upon the doubters. That is your senses and what reason dictates. That's the hell or the devil or Satan in the world. That's the doubter. So you turn your back upon it. And then you walk as though things were as you want them to be. And living in that assumption, it slowly hardens into fact. Even though at the moment of the assumption it was denied by reason, an assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. So you learn to assume and learn to persist in the assumption, and it will come to pass. Now let us go into the silence, after which we'll have questions. Good. Well, I hope you call it good mood. It'll work. Now, are there any questions, please? Any questions? Yes, sir.
You once mentioned that you met your secretary and the mention was this experience.
Well, to answer your question, I must just go back and explain it to those who are here for the first time. No. I make the statement based upon my own experience that nothing dies. And that's not only true of man, it's true of the flowers, of the animal world, of the trees, of everything. Nothing dies. I am the God of the living, not of the dead. So nothing dies. The little flower that blooms once, blooms forever. It's renewed by the seed of contemplative thought. And then the New York Times complained that they had so many more sales. And all the advertisers who advertised in that paper for Monday just simply had a blank because they aren't reading anything but their own little section. And it was all prearranged by the editor. That I know from experience, from my same Jack Butler. When they made a mistake in one of my ads once, he went down to investigate. So he went to the editor of the religious section. And she said he had to do something to pacify him. And she said, how would you like to see the editorial staff of the social section of our paper? Well, Jack was always up for fun. He said, I would love it. And it was just about 2 months before Easter. And all these ladies and their daughters were all around the place, dozens and dozens of them, waiting to be interviewed. Each was going to say exactly what we're going to wear. That's been ordered. The dress is all ordered and maybe already delivered. And the kind of a hat, and what church we attend, and where we're going to come out. And the cameras will be there to photograph it. And the morning service will carry as spontaneous. All spontaneous. And that's the dream world. A man just retired after very successful 30 years in the show business. His name is Sinatra. I recall this vividly when he was a young boy. I came out of my tailor on 48th Street, which was between 5th and Madison Avenue. I'm walking towards 5th, and when I got to 5th, here is 3 dozen young girls, 16, 17. And here is a cab, right in the middle of 5th Avenue, and here is this young lad. Well, he's 10 years my junior, so he was then, well, whatever it was then, when he got started. His foot on the runway, the cab stalled, traffic backed up, all the horns are honking, the cop is inquiring, and he is signing autographs to these 30 or more. All that was prearranged to block the traffic. So what? They'll give him a ticket. They give the cabbie a ticket. And he'll pay it. It'll cost him what? $50, $100? But the publicity, all that was part of the promotion. He kept that going until now. And people think, what a big, wonderful man. That has been promoted from the time that he began to breathe as a young lad, as a singer. And it goes all through our entire dream world. And how do you go? Don't stop it. You can't stop it. It's part of the dream world. I am not telling you of the dream world. I am telling you of the world wherein you will awake. And when you awake, you'll be clothed in your immortal body. And that is heaven. Heaven is not a realm. It's not an area. Wherever you are clothed in your glorified body is heaven, because nothing remains imperfect in your presence. If you walk through the petrified forest, it would all burst into foliage. If you walk in the desert would blossom. Everything would become beautiful. And things long dead, or not even visible, will suddenly appear because you walk by. So wherever you go, clothed in your glorified body, which comes with your resurrection, makes every place that you go perfect. For wherever you are, things must be perfect. That's what we are celebrating this week. But they aren't telling it that way. They're telling of a little man who died a horrible death 2,000 years ago. And then they took him down from the tree and then put him in a tomb. But God raised him from the dead. You are the one spoken of, and you are still hanging on that tree in a way, for you are nailed upon this body. And the nails are vortices. 6 vortices. A vortex, a vortex, a vortex, a vortex, and both feet. And they are whirling vortices that nailed you here. And may I tell you from my own experience, it was sheer ecstasy. It wasn't painful. There was no pain whatsoever. Sheer ecstasy. And then oblivion. And that oblivion was a complete forgetfulness of the being that you are. And you are buried in your skull. And in that skull you dream the dream of life, as you're dreaming it now. And because it is a dream, if you know it's a dream, you can dream anything it to be. If you know it's a dream. You can control the dream. So what would the feeling be like if it were true? Well, you name what it is you would like to be true. And naming it, you dream it just as though it were true. Remain faithful to your assumption. And that assumption of yours, though, at the moment, appears to be false and denied by your senses, if you persist in it, it will harden into fact. This is the story, and I am telling you what I know that I have experienced. I have experienced the Lord bringing things into being that I dare to assume, because I wanted them to be brought into being. And the other, which is the fulfillment of God's promise. For I was that Abraham, so are you. And we were shown the gospel beforehand. We were given a preview of it. And we were told, you will go into a world that is not yours. And there you will be enslaved, and there you will be injured, and there you will be maltreated. But after 400 years, you will come out. Now the 400 is not 400 as you measure time. 400 is simply a symbolical number of a cross. It is a numerical number of the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet, which is the Toph. And Toph has the symbol of a cross. And this is the cross. So as long as I bear this, I am in the world of the furnaces. But I will come out of it. I will awaken within it, come out of it. And one day, soon after I awaken within it and come out of it, I will shed it. And shedding it, I will go back to the glory that was mine before that the world was. But enhanced by reason of wearing the cross in this world. Because no one can consummate this bliss that we saw before the world was, unless he is generated here in this world in flesh and blood. So I come down and I find myself wearing a garment woven in the womb of a woman. And I put on that garment and I'm nailed on it. And then I'm buried in that garment, but buried in the skull. And because I'm buried in the skull, I come out of the skull. And when I come out of that skull, still wearing the garment, for a little interval of time to tell and share it with my brothers, to encourage them to continue, no matter what happens, to continue. Dream nobly and realize the dreams. But dream nobly, because in the not distant future, you're going to awaken. And when you awaken, you're going to take off the little garment. And that is the cross that you wore for your journey, which is called in Scripture the 400 years. Really, it's thousands of years. You've been wearing it for thousands of years. For there is no death, really, only restoration.
Hello and welcome to the channel Neville Goddard. Today we are going to show you how to climb a ladder. This is one of the most and best exercises and techniques to learn and to try yourself, so you can manifest anything you want in life. Neville said something to do to a group of people who went to listen to him. He gave something to do to them to prove that he is wrong or not. Neville said to them, I will teach you right now how to climb a ladder, and do it to prove it if I'm wrong or not. And he said to the people who went to his teachings, do what I'm telling you to do, and if it doesn't work, then I'm a fraud. And then he started to tell them how to climb the ladder. This is the way how you climb a ladder. First of all, right now, picture a ladder in front of you. Picture it. You can do it using your wonderful human imagination. Close your eyes and picture it. Take your imaginary left hand, reach out and take hold of the side of the ladder. So you do it with your imaginary left hand. Okay. Now with your imaginary right hand, reach out and take the other side of the ladder. Now with your imaginary left foot, lift it up and put it in the first rung. And now push yourself up and start climbing the ladder. When you get to the top of the ladder, climb back down. Then climb back up and climb back down. You repeat this often, and as you do this often and daily, you try to create a feeling as this is already fulfilled. Now you have to do something, and you must do this, otherwise nothing I'm teaching you will work. You have to put inside your wallet, so when you open your wallet, you have to read it. I will not climb a ladder. You do it in the mirror, so you see it when you wake up in the morning. You gotta do it in the phone or laptop as a wallpaper where you read it, I will not climb a ladder. So Neville said to his students, you must do this, otherwise what I'm teaching you will not mean anything. You must do this. You must mean it in your heart that I will not climb a ladder. So you mean it. You do this so you can prove yourself that whatever you say all day will not have any effect if you do it and feel it before sleep. And now you must do this for 3 nights. I want you to climb a ladder for 3 nights before sleep. But if it doesn't work, you don't stop. You do it for another 3 nights until it works. Now when you go to bed, go in a position you don't normally sleep. So you force yourself to imagine and not fall asleep immediately. If you slept before in the right side, now you sleep in your left side. If you slept in your left, then now sleep on your back. Then you got to climb a ladder while you are in an odd position in bed and in a drowsy, sleepy state. You have to climb the ladder until you sleep. And you do this for 3 nights. And when you wake up in the morning, you got to read it, I will not climb a ladder. And make sure it's something you see every day. I will not climb a ladder, but you got to climb the ladder in your sleep for 3 nights. Before sleep you gotta climb the ladder. So you got to do this, otherwise nothing I'm teaching you will work. And now Neville said to his students, next Sunday I'm gonna have another meeting, like this one. But that meeting will be only for those who have climbed the ladder. So those who climb the ladder can go to the next meeting. And now one of the Neville students who told this story, Locker, climbed the ladder and went to the meeting, and all of those who climbed the ladder. Of course there was so much fewer people than those who went first in the teachings. What Neville said to them was this, now listen. As how you climbed the ladder, you could have just as easily made millions in cash. Not only money, but anything else that you want to have in your life and want to manifest. So now, what I say to all of you is, take all of you this challenge of Neville and climb a ladder in your imagination for 3 nights or more. For those of you who climb the ladder, please post here in the comment section your successful stories so that you can inspire others with your successful stories and may inspire and motivate others so they can also climb the ladder. You can post your successful stories below in this video in the comment section. Also you can send them to my email in about section on the channel so I can take them and post in the community tab of the channel so we inspire all followers of this channel. Try it now, from today, and good luck to all. I love you all.
I trust that you will find tonight's message a very practical one. Because today, there are so many reading the paper and believing what they see and what they hear on radio and TV, with the depression and the recession and this, that, and the other. Now tonight, let me tell you who you are. We are told in Scripture, this is the 19th chapter, the 26th verse of Matthew. With God, all things are possible. Then we are told in the earliest gospel, the book of Mark, the 9th chapter, the 23rd verse. All things are possible to him who believes. Divine imagining has no restrictions placed upon it. human imagining has one restriction placed upon it: to believe. All things are possible to him who believes. So they equate man, he's speaking of you, with God. But on this level, it is believing. Can you believe it? There is no other limitation other than man's capacity to believe what he has imagined. All things are possible to him who believes. So the only restriction placed upon man is his ability to believe what his reason, what his senses deny. That's all. No other restriction. Now I'll turn to the 115th Psalm. And here, I think the whole vast world has been guilty of this. The psalmist claims, our God is in the heavens. Their idols are made. First of all, our God is in the heavens, and he does what he pleases. No matter what it is, he does what he pleases. Their idols are made with human hands of silver and gold. They have voices, but they speak not. Or rather, they have mouths, but they speak not. And eyes that do not see. They have ears that do not hear. And they have hands that do not feel. And feet that do not walk. And there is no sound from their throats. Those who make them are like them, and those who believe in them are like them. To believe in anything outside of yourself as the cause of the phenomena of life, you're believing in something made with the human hand. I don't care what you call it. Now, who is this God who does as he pleases? That is equated with man. Well, you try to think of anything other than your own wonderful human imagination. Our God is in the heavens, and we are told that heaven is within you in the 17th chapter of the book of Luke. That God is within you. If he is within me, what in me does anything that it pleases? Nothing but my imagination. I can imagine anything in the world. The most incredible thing I can imagine. But as man, one condition is imposed upon me. I must believe it. If I can persuade myself of the reality of that which I have imagined, no power in the world can stop it from coming to pass. Man creates his objective world out of imagination and faith. These are the substances out of which he actually projects and objectifies his world. There is nothing but God, and God is man's own wonderful human imagination. Man is all imagination, and God is man, and exists in us, and we in him. The eternal body of man is the imagination, and that is God himself. So divine imagining, yes, it's instantaneous, but when it's keyed low into the human form, then there is one condition imposed upon it: can I believe it? So I now come to the point of faith. What is faith? Faith is the subjective appropriation of the objective hope. So I have a hope. I would like to be this, that, or the other in this world. Or I would like someone, a friend of mine, to be this, that, or the other. Now I must appropriate it subjectively. I go down in my imagination and I simply conceive a scene which would imply that it's true. And I appropriate it. How do I appropriate a scene? I create a scene which would imply that it is true. Bring in the individual or friends before me, and I can have friends tell me, have you heard the good news? And I will act as though I didn't know what is the good news. Have you heard the news about, and they mention my friend, and I listen eagerly to what they're telling me about my friend. I'm appropriating subjectively my objective hope. All I have to do then is to persist in that state. As Shakespeare said in his Antony and Cleopatra, it hath been taught us from the primal state that that which is was wished until it were. But he used the pronoun he. But you can use it of anything in this world. But he said that he which, wishing the being to come into being. But you can wish it for a home, a place, or anything in the world. You need not confine it to a friend. That he which is was wished until he were. You can make it or there or anything else in the world. It's simply from the very beginning. The primal wish was simply to so give myself to a state that I lost myself in the state and I remain in that state until the state became objectified within my world. This is what the Bible is teaching everyone in this world.
Creating a better world through creative endeavors. With handcrafted, beautiful pieces of jewelry. Made from the highest quality materials, gorgeous stones, with 5-star ratings online and from museums.
We are told that the simple apprehension of corporeal objects, if present, is sense. That is sense perceived. This is now sense perceived. I can see you, and if you speak, and I hear you, that is sense perceived, and you are present. Therefore, that is real, they say. If absent, it is imagination. In other words, it isn't real. It isn't sense perceived. Now we'll take one of the senses. We'll take the sense of smell. Since smell is a chemical sense, a contact is necessary for perception. You have to actually have a chemical contact to smell in this world. Now I ask you to join with me. Maybe you do not like flowers as I do. Can you smell a rose? And it's not present. There aren't any roses here or in your presence. But can you now imagine a rose and smell it? I can. It's so distinct. Well, if the rose is not here when I smell it, why is its fragrance in the air? When it depends upon a chemical contact. You cannot smell anything in this world without a chemical contact. I go into the kitchen, so I smell gas. And it's not lit, but I notice I smell gas. It's a chemical contact. Then I notice that the wind, leaving the window open, blew out the little pilot light. I turn it on, and nothing happens. Therefore, I know the pilot is gone. And I light it. But I could smell that was a chemical contact. If I could not detect it, I could just simply become asphyxiated. If I had lost that olfactory nerve and could not reach that chemical contact. But now here, there's no rose, and I can actually smell a rose. Now, you say, well, what does that mean? It means so much to me. You can smell money. Money has an odor unlike anything in this world. Entirely different. You can actually take it and smell it. A money bag is more fragrant to the miser than all the flowers of the world. It's a pleasant odor to him. Not to me. I need money. I have to have money to pay all the normal expenses in this world. But it's not to me a fragrant odor. But I use this principle towards getting money, towards meeting all the obligations of life. For I am obligated as you are. So I go down to the potter's house. Well, I can sit in a chair. I can stand at a bar. I can do it wherever I am right there in the potter's house, for I found the potter. The potter is my imagination. And the potter is the Father, the Lord God Almighty. And I found him. So I don't have to go any place outside of where I stand to be in the potter's house. And now I will see what he's doing. So I see what I'm doing. What am I imagining? For that's what he's working on. So I went down to the potter's house and I simply saw what he was doing. What am I imagining? Is it a good image that I am forming of myself and my friends and things that I love in this world? Or am I critical? Am I simply making a mess of the talent? And I find quite often I am not using it wisely. I tell you that the worship of God is to use His gifts. That's the only way you really worship God. He gave you a talent. Well, the talent is Himself. It comes through, naturally, the five senses. I may be denied 4 of them. As many are born minus 1, 2, 3, or maybe 4. Most would have the sense of touch. But some are born blind, or they go blind. Some go deaf. Some lost the sense of sound, speech. All these things, but nevertheless, I can use in my imagination all these talents. Physically, they may be denied me, but I still have an open door from within, and I can use it from within. I need not actually have them all open on the outside if I'm born restricted. I can still call upon them from within, as I do now, to smell the rose. A friend of mine, she's gone from this world now. In New York City many, many years ago, I told a story similar to this tonight. And sitting in my audience, she said, well, now, I'm going to test this. And in the silence, she embraced a huge bouquet of roses. She lived in the towers, the Waldorf Astoria. So when she went home that night, as she went down the hallway towards her room, she detected a strong odor of roses. And she stopped at one door, thinking it might be here. It was permeating the entire hallway. She kept on going, and it got stronger and stronger. And when she opened her door, here were 36 long beauties on her bureau. The window was open just a little bit, and it came bringing the odor through into the hallway. There was no note on it, but here were these lovely roses. The next day, she was informed how it happened. That night, the English-speaking Union gave a party for the present Queen's mother, who was Queen Elizabeth, but not Queen in the true sense of the word. She was George's wife. She was queen while he reigned. And they had these enormous flowers raised for the occasion. And at the end of the banquet, when 1,000 of them sat at this dinner, they wondered what to do with the roses. And the head waiter said, well, Mrs. Niemeyer loves flowers, especially roses. Send 3 dozen up to her room. You either throw them away or find some way to use them wisely. And so Mrs. Nehemiah was given 3 dozen of these beauties, which she certainly did not expect, but she thought she would try it. And she embraced in her mind's eye, and she could smell the roses. And then came 3 dozen beauties into her room. I have known people who will take money in their mind's eye and actually feel it, and it's not present, and smell it and count it off. And then it happens just like that. Man is not completely confined to the little garment and the 5 senses through which contact is made with the world. He has imagination. Imagination is God. That's the potter. That is the Lord. That is our Father. And He gave us Himself. And the only way to truly worship God is to use His gifts. When we open the Bible and read the story as it's given to us, we may think we are talking about people that lived, individuals, persons that, as we are, but it's not so. The characters depicted in the Bible are not the individuals named. They are simply states signified by those names. For instance, the name Moses, or the name Abraham, or the name, well, any name that you find in Scripture. They are not individuals, as you and I are. It's simply a state of consciousness through which the individual, you and I, the immortal being, we pass through these states. The word Moses means to be born. It's the old perfective of the Egyptian verb to be born. Abraham, the father of the multitudes. We start there, moving through states. And you and I pass through these states towards our own redemption. We come to the end. And that state is personified in Scripture. And men take the personification and worship it as a person, stick it on the wall, and then cross themselves before it and genuflect, not knowing that these are states. So we must learn to distinguish between states and the individuals who pass through these states. These states are eternal. They are forever. You are an immortal being, and you move through states. The states remain permanent forever. You pass on. We change states. The states do not change. We change states. But we, the individual, we are forever. It's like moving through a city. The city remains, but we pass on. To think that because we have left the city, that the city has ceased to exist would be stupid. The city remains, and we go on. We pass from one state to another state, and finally we come to the end. That end is described in Scripture as Jesus. But that's a state. You are the immortal being passing through states. And when you come to the very end, you are in that state. It was predetermined. It was shown all of us before we started. Shown us in the state called Abraham. We saw it all in detail. And if we entered it reluctantly or not, who knows? Paul tells us that we were made subject unto futility. Not willingly, but by the will of Him who subjected us in hope. And the hope was that we would obtain the glorious liberty of the sons of God. So we were told that it was not altogether a willing subjection on our part, but we kept the divine vision, as Paul said, in time of trouble. And so we continue on the journey. In this world, you and I can create states, but the spiritual states are eternal. We create a state here, it's not eternal. We create a state to deliver individuals forevermore. I create a state, somebody asks me, will you hear that I am, and they name what they would like to be. All right? So that I must create the state, knowing that he is now in a state that he dislikes. I must distinguish between the being and the state that he is in. So I see him unemployed. All right? So he's unemployed. And he wants to be gainfully employed. There's nothing wrong in that. So I represent him to myself as one who is gainfully employed, who has more than he's ever had before. To the degree that I am self-persuaded that he is what I have now imagined him to be, to that degree he will actually become it. I move him out of one state into another. But that state into which he fell remains for anyone to fall into it. And all can fall into it at the same time, for that matter. He's not the only occupant of the state of being unemployed. There could be millions being unemployed. And there could be millions who desire to be out of it. Many who are unemployed have no desire to be out of it. They prefer to be on welfare. That's their desire. Perfectly all right. But if someone desires to be gainfully employed and to leave the state of being unemployed, you and I can create that state. Well, how do I create the state? By using my imagination. Imagination is not a state. It's the human existence himself. You are all imagination. And God is all imagination. You are God. And God is actually within you as your own wonderful human imagination. Now, these permanent states of the soul, these spiritual states, they remain. You and I pass through them towards our own redemption. But in the interval, we meet a friend, and the friend is in need of help. And the help is to move him out of the state. I can give him money, but as Peter said, silver and gold have I not for thee, but such as I have give I unto thee. And he creates a state, and takes the man from being a beggar, who's always begging on the corner, and puts him into a state where he jumps up with joy. He's now employed, not begging for money. So he didn't give him coins. He simply gave him a new state of consciousness. So I take you as an individual. I represent you to myself as the one that you would like to be. The one that I, if I were in your state, would like to be. I make it fit within what is known as the golden rule. I do unto others as I would have them do unto me. If I were in that state, would I like to be in some better state? Certainly. Well then, do it to another. And so if he asks it of you, you simply represent him to yourself as being gainfully employed, or if he is unwell, as being well, or if he wants to be married and he can't find the proper mate, then in your mind's eye, you assume that he has found the proper mate. Whatever it is that is a normal, natural request that is not in conflict with your own moral, ethical code. And you create a state. This state, then you lift your individual into that state. Well, how do I do it? I carry on a conversation mentally with that friend from the basis that he is in that state. He tells me how happy he is with his new job and how much he's making. I see him in my mind's eye radiant. Well then, am I self-persuaded that this imaginal act is a fact? Do I really believe in the reality of what I've done? Do I believe that imagining creates reality? I do. Well then, to the degree that I am self-persuaded, he becomes the embodiment of what I've imagined him to be. These are states. So man must distinguish between the individual and the state that he is in. So Blake said, I do not consider the just or the wicked to be in a supreme state, but to be every one of them states of the sleep into which the soul may fall in its deadly dreams of good and evil when it left paradise following the serpent of generation. So we came down to experience death, for this is a world of death, where everything appears, it waxes, it wanes, and it disappears. So everything dies in this world. No matter how long it seems to live, it dies eventually. So we come down into the world of death. And the last enemy to be destroyed or to be overcome is death. I enter death and then conquer death to prove that I cannot die. I am an immortal being, for I am all imagination. It's not just to entertain an idea. What idea? The idea must produce in you this feeling, which is a sensation, but it must be a feeling. What would the feeling be like if it were true? You dwell upon that until you catch that feeling. As Churchill said, that the mood determines the fortunes of people, rather than the fortunes, the mood. The mood precedes the fortune. So what would you want in this world? Well, contemplate it. What would the feeling be like if you had it? What would it be like if it were true? You can do it. There is no flower in your hand, but you can feel the soft velvet feeling of a rose. You can smell a rose, though it's not physically present. Try it. Try all these things with the inner man. And when you can actually feel it, so that you raise your imagination to the point of sensation, to vision, then the whole thing is done. It's done in a way you do not know it's going to happen. So tonight you want a bigger job, you want more money in this world, you want, and you name it. Well, then it may be a thief who is going to aid you in the getting, without knowing he's doing it. Don't judge him, don't condemn him, just simply you go forward knowing that I have ways and means that the physical man knows not of. My ways, the inner man's ways, are past finding out. And you simply go forward in the assumption that you have already achieved what now is only a wish as far as the world is concerned. But you enter into the wish as though the wish is already fulfilled. So tonight is a practical night. Do you know this night what you want? Really what you want? Do what I did when I was locked out completely from marrying the girl I wanted to marry. I simply assumed that she slept there, I slept here, and I went sound asleep, and in 1 week my wife did an act which certainly I must forgive. In the eyes of the world, she is condemned for taking what she did not pay for. And yet because of that act, I got my freedom. Then who is the culprit? Am I not? If there's any culprit, I am. If there is any culprit in this world, it is God. There is nothing but God. God is doing all in this world. He created everything in this world. And so if in me, he is the second man, and the second man is my imagination, and that is God. For man is all imagination, and God is man, and exists in us, and we in him. The eternal body of man is the imagination, and that is God himself. Well, if I in my imagination slept as though I am happily married to a girl that the laws of New York State said I could never get because of my entanglement with my first wife, And in 1 week, she performed an act which was judged harshly by society. And yet she was the instrument of my getting my freedom to marry the girl who now is the mother of my daughter. So how can I blame her who performed that act? She was in a state, and who did it? I did it. I did it by simply assuming that I was free and happily married to a girl that the state of New York said I could never marry because of the ancient laws that restricted my desire to get freedom in that state. So you forgive everyone in this world. They're all playing their parts. So in my own case, I have seen thieves. I have seen all kinds of people play their parts. They were instruments in the fulfillment of my desire. So how can I ever condemn all? So tonight you just simply boldly declare that you are the man. You are the woman that you want to be. And walk in that assumption as though it were true. And then let all these sleeping states play their part. May I tell you, in spite of what they appear to be, they are sound asleep. For God plays all the parts in the world. There is nothing but God. And say, I am, that's God. That is the Lord Jesus within you. That is your immortal being that cannot die. He cannot die. That is your eternal self when you say, I am. Imagination is not some vague essence. It is a body, a reality, an infinite body that is so perfect when it's awakened that in its presence everything is made perfect. But while it is awakening, it exercises that power and draws into its world everyone that can play the part for its fulfillment of its dream. So here, I hope you heard it clearly. I hope I've made it as clear as I can, because tonight should be a very practical night. That you will go out knowing who you are. You are a dual being. But the first man is of the dust, and to dust he returns. That is the man of earth. The second man is the Lord from heaven, and he cannot die. That's your own wonderful human imagination. It cannot die. But it sleeps. It sleeps embodied in this tomb. And one day it will awaken. As I've told you in the past, the symbolism of Scripture will surround you. It's perfect. It is true. Everything told you in Scripture as to his birth, you are going to experience. And then your imagination awakens. And you trust no one but it. Only this being within you do you really worship.
Most of us are totally unaware of the fact that our inner conversations are the causes of the circumstances of our life. We are told that as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. But do we know that man's thinking follows the tracks laid down in his own inner conversations? To turn the tracks to which he is tied in the direction in which he wants to go, he must put off his former conversation, which is called in the Bible the old man, and be renewed in the spirit of his mind. Speech is the image of mind. Therefore, to change his mind, he must first change his speech. By speech is meant those mental conversations we carry on with ourselves. The world is a magic circle of infinite possible mental transformations. for they are an infinite number of possible mental conversations. When man discovers the creative power of inner talking, he will realize his function and his mission in life. Then he can act to a purpose. Without such knowledge, he acts unconsciously. Everything is a manifestation of the mental conversations which go on in us without our being aware of them. But as civilized beings, we must become aware of them and act with a purpose. A man's mental conversations attracts his life. As long as there is no change in his inner talking, the personal history of the man remains the same. To attempt to change the world before we change our inner talking is the struggle against the very nature of things. Man can go round and round in the same circle of disappointments and misfortunes, not seeing them as caused by his own negative inner talking, but as caused by others. This may seem far-fetched, but it is a matter which lends itself to research and experiment. The formula the chemist illustrates is not more certainly provable than the formula of this science by which words are clothed in objective reality. One day a girl told me of her difficulties in working with her employer. She was convinced that he unjustly criticized and rejected her very best efforts. Upon hearing her story, I explained that if she thought him unfair, it was a sure sign that she herself was in need of a new conversation piece. There was no doubt but that she was mentally arguing with her employer, for others only echo that which we whisper to them in secret. She confessed that she argued with him mentally all day long. When she realized what she had been doing, she agreed to change her inner conversations with her employer. She imagined that he had congratulated her on her fine work, and that she, in turn, had thanked him for his praise and kindness. To her great delight, she soon discovered that her own attitude was the cause of all that befell her. The behavior of her employer reversed itself. It echoed, as it had always done, her mental conversations with him. I rarely see a person alone without wondering to what conversation piece is he tied. On what mysterious track is he walking? We must begin to take life consciously, for the solution of all problems lies just in this. The second man, the Lord from heaven in all of us, is trying to become self-conscious in the body, that he may be about his Father's business. What are his labors? To imitate his Father, to become master of the Word, master of his inner talking, that he may mold this world of ours into a likeness with the kingdom of love. The prophet said, "Be ye imitators of God as dear children." How would I imitate God? Well, we are told that God calls things that are not seen as though they were seen, and the unseen become seen. This is the way the girl called forth praise and kindness from her employer. She carried on an imaginary conversation with her employer from the premise that he had praised her work, and he did. Our inner conversations represent in various ways the world we live in. Our individual worlds are self-revelations of our own inner speech. We are told that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof. For by their words they shall be justified, and by their words they shall be condemned. We abandon ourselves to negative inner talking, yet expect to retain command of life. Our present mental conversations do not recede into the past as man believes. They advance into the future to confront us as wasted or invested words. My word, said the prophet, shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in all the things whereto I sent it. How would I send my word to help a friend? I would imagine that I am hearing his voice, that he is physically present, that my hand is on him. I would then congratulate him on his good fortune, tell him that I have never seen him look better. I would listen as though I heard him. I would imagine that he is telling me he has never felt better, he has never been happier. And I would know that in this loving, knowing communion with another, a communion populous with loving thoughts and feelings, that my word was sent, and it shall not return unto me void, but it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it. Now is the accepted time. Now is the day of salvation. It is only what is done now that counts. even though its effects may not be visible until tomorrow. We call not aloud, but by an inner effort of intense attention. To listen attentively, as though you heard, is to create. The events and relationships of life are your word made visible. Most of us rob others of their willingness and their ability to be kind and generous by our fixed attitudes towards them. Our attitudes unfold within us in the form of mental conversations. Inner talking from premises of fulfilled desire is the way to consciously create circumstances. Our inner conversations are perpetually outpictured all around us in happenings. Therefore, what we desire to see and hear without, we must see and hear within, for the whole manifested world goes to show us what use we have made of the word. If you practice this art of controlled inner speaking, you too will know what a thrill it is to be able to say, and now I have told you before it come to pass, that when it is come to pass, ye might believe. You will be able to consciously use your imagination to transform and channel the immense creative energies of your inner speech from the mental, emotional level to the physical level. And I do not know what limits, if any, there are to such a process. What is your aim? Does your inner talking match it? It must, you know. If you would realize your aim, for as the prophet asked, can two walk together except they be agreed? And of course the answer is no, they cannot. The two who must agree are your inner conversation and the state desired. That is, what you desire to see and hear without, you must see and hear within. Every stage of man's progress is made by the conscious exercise of his imagination, matching his inner speech to his fulfilled desire. As we control our inner talking, matching it to our fulfilled desires, we can lay aside all other processes. Then we simply act by clear imagination and intention. We imagine the wish fulfilled and carry on mental conversations from that premise. The right inner speech is the speech that would be yours were you to realize your ideal. In other words, it is the speech of fulfilled desire. Now you will understand how wise the ancient was when he told us in the Hermetica, there are two gifts which God has bestowed upon man alone, and on no other mortal creature. These two are mind and speech, and the gift of mind and speech is equivalent to that of immortality. If a man uses these two gifts rightly, he will differ in nothing from the immortals. And when he quits his body, mind and speech will be his guides, and by them he will be brought into the troop of the gods and the souls that have attained to bliss. With the gift of mind and speech, you create the conditions and circumstances of life. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word, said Hermes, is Son, and mind is Father of the Word. They are not separate one from the other, for life is the union of word and mind. You and your inner talking, or word, are one. If your mind is one with your inner conversation, then to be transformed in mind is to be transformed in conversation. It was a flash of the deepest insight that taught Paul to write, put off the former conversation, the old man, which is corrupt, and be renewed in the spirit of your mind. Put on the new man. Put on the new man and be renewed in the spirit of your mind is to change your inner conversation, for speech and mind are one. A change of speech is a change of mind.